Thank you. Who gave you this quote? That's interesting. Well, thanks anyway. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Markus. I'm the partner at Tribe and also started Bootcamp Fintech co-founder, which I started in London 2.5 years ago. David did a very impressive presentation on P2P lending. And so I'm here to share a bit more what happens in the markets we haven't really touched yet much, which is Southeast Asia and India. So I'm not a P2P lending expert at all. Tribe is an investment partnership. We invest in fintech companies in Southeast Asia, amongst others. And P2P lending is one of the things we're looking at. So I thought I'd come here to Korea today and share a bit more what we see happening in the markets of Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and so on, and India, which are fairly untapped. So I can't really offer you any kind of dragon anything. I can offer you basically a unicorn that is at the moment struggling a bit. Yeah? So you might have heard of Lending Club, the big company in the States, which one of the P2P companies, who struggled a bit a few weeks ago. And this is what happens in the West at the moment. I think there are a few things going not right, and David has pointed out the risks associated with this. So I look now into the future, into the opportunities we see, and all the things that are happening in Southeast Asia. Yeah, because I think there are very different structures and dynamics in the local markets compared to the West. I came to Singapore 2 years ago from London. I was seeing all these trends of crowdfunding, P2P lending happening in London, in Europe mainland, and also in the States. I was excited about coming to Southeast Asia because you actually have a very different economy, very different need of the customers. So I focus a bit more on this presentation on the SMEs, on the markets of the small enterprises especially, who are plenty of them around the region there. I borrowed a few slides from Deloitte, so thanks Deloitte for doing the research. I didn't do the research, but basically what it says is that the SMEs are one of the most important factors of the economy in Southeast Asia. You can see a few numbers here. Indonesia has, I think, 97 billion of the USB GDP is coming from SMEs. Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand have equal numbers. There is a lot of employment. 97% of employment is in SMEs in Indonesia itself. Yeah. So 250 million people live in Indonesia. That means almost 200-something million people are employed at SMEs. Yeah. Singapore is a small country, but again, you still have a lot of impact on the SMEs and employment rates. Secondly, where do these SMEs actually get the funding from? It's not just about banks, not at all actually. Take Indonesia again. Internal funds are 86%. So these SMEs, normally like these small shops at the corner, they fund themselves through family and other networks. Malaysia is very banked, yeah, but also at the same time has using their own funds. So I think the story continues. Philippines has a very, very large network of branches of banks. So naturally there is a high rate of bank loans. But then I think Thailand is a good example where you have a very, very high concentration of internet. It's the country with the highest mobile phone penetration and the highest amount of internet usage per user. And they're using most of their own savings to run the family, the business, and also family and friends are a very, very formal way of getting the loans. What does it tell us? It tells us that SMEs are fairly unserved. Yeah. Indonesia, again, all the countries, you can see how they either are unserved or even underserved. This is, I think, just to show you how really the markets are very different to what we see happening in UK or US. So where do we see SMEs? I think, where do we see P2P? David has put out already all the definitions. I'm not going to do in too much detail. We put it into the inclusive finance. What I'm trying to say is that, again, with the SMEs, they don't have access to all the banking loans. We see it as an inclusive part to give these institutions and small businesses more ways to get access to credit. Not about all the transformative stuff, not about the disruptive stuff, it's about inclusive finance, making the pie bigger. Yeah, definitions to go over this one. So, I picked a few countries to really give you a few insights and do like a quick check what's going on. Normally you start talking about Singapore, because that's the most advanced fintech ecosystem in Asia, or sorry, Southeast Asia. But I thought this time I'd start with actually Malaysia. Malaysia is actually the first country that has regulated crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding. They were very quick, late last year, early this year, to do a regulation around crowdfunding, which didn't really make the Singaporeans too happy, to be honest, but they made it happen. So they gave out 6 licenses to crowdfunding websites, and also now at the moment are reviewing the P2P lending framework. and have asked the consultation paper to give feedback to this. But to be honest with you, there's no really real peer-to-peer retail lending at the moment. It's mostly focused on SMEs. The other opportunity is Islamic finance. As you might know, if you're a Muslim, you're not allowed to take any loans that is based on interest rates. So there is an interesting opportunity to think about peer-to-peer lending in this way. And you have an opportunity around having a very good regulator that is fairly progressive and is not against crowdfunding or peer-to-peer lending at the moment. The challenge is in Malaysia, like I think most of the times in Southeast Asia, that SMEs just don't know about internet as such. SMEs are these corner shops who have a smartphone, who go to the bank, have a relationship with someone, but they don't really know about peer-to-peer lending yet. So or crowdfunding is a lot of education has to happen at this stage to say this is an opportunity, an alternative to access credit and loans that goes beyond the bank that you know. Another one is that now for the new P2P license, we need some pent-up capital of $1.2 million, but I think that will be managed. A few of the websites, so maybe some names you will hear in the future a bit more. You have Crowdo, Crowdplus, and Alix. They have raised, and you can see it's very small numbers. It's nothing really big yet. It's just started. Just started 2 years ago. Crowdo raised 1-point-something million in seed funding. They only processed $900,000 of loans so far. So it's, to say of any kind of success story or anything, it's really too early. They started last year, basically. You have Crowdplus, who, again, there's no data available on these companies. Where Lending Club and Funding Circle and all the other ones in China have started 8-10 years ago. These guys have started 2 years ago. So it's very early to say what's going on there. Singapore, the next country, the one I'm living in. You have no regulations so far. The Singapore government has now announced this very wonderful sandbox for regulation. This is a way for them to monitor the startups and to put them into a kind of a sandbox environment to see what they can regulate at some point. You need a license to operate, a capital markets license to operate crowdfunding websites, and they're looking to regulate it at some point, but not at this stage. I think the opportunity in Singapore really is that the banks like DBS and OCBC and UOB are fairly open to work with startups. There have been a few partnerships established now between crowdfunding websites, P2P lending platforms, and banks. I will show a few examples in a minute. And also, if you're in Singapore, you actually have a benefit of reputational advantage to say, I'm in Singapore now, I can move to Malaysia or Indonesia. And you have like this stamp of approval from the region that really helps you to move quicker. Singapore is a very banked market, and maybe you saw the slide earlier. SMEs is an island, effectively. It's very small, and you can just go to the bank next door. You have a relationship already with a banker. So if you talk to all the SME platforms out there, they don't really get good SMEs to use them for the credit. And I think that education is happening, but it's a very banked market, and I don't really see much opportunity in the future for them to grow there. The famous names in our little ecosystem in Singapore, funding societies, which was the one who raised 1.2 million just recently and has already transferred 6.1 million Singapore dollars, which is around $5 million US. And they're expanding very fast, and have done a partnership with DBS Bank, a bit like Cabbage and Santander in the UK, where DBS Bank refers SMEs to funding societies if they can't serve the SME. Capital Match, another one, and Mola Sense are the other two, there's a fly here, who are now processing a few loans. Indonesia is obviously a very huge country, 250 million people. You would assume a very, very big market. It's just started with Fintech. There was an event 2 months ago that talked about Fintech for the first time. I think there will also be very soon a first global Fintech forum in Jakarta happening. And P2P lending is one of the first ones that's happening there as a subsector in Fintech. We have 105 million people have no access at all to finance. There are 16,000 islands in Indonesia where very, very remote people are living. They have never seen a bank before. They don't even know the word bank, if you like. So it's a very, very underserved market on the retail side and on the SME side. So, and the opportunity really is to say, how can you make it happen? How can you make P2P happen? But I think the biggest challenge in Indonesia right now is that infrastructure is very, very limited. So it's an emerging market, just developing the right mobile networks, developing the right branch networks of banks, and things are just very slow there. So education of retail and SMEs to actually use P2P lending will take probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years until you can really see some growth there. And I also have to say that regulator in Indonesia is very, very restrictive. So I think there will be few regulations coming up, which we all won't like, really. But nevertheless, there are platforms, 3 of them who Crowd, you already seen the name before, they are expanding, have raised some seed funding, have raised some initial investments, but again, very, very small. I think that's kind of the run through from the concrete countries. A few of the other ones, you also are in ASEAN. Nothing really exciting to say. It's very early days. If you are a startup, you do crowdfunding like UK or US, there's enough cash around, enough angels around to really invest in you. If you're retail, I think you have other problems right now than to think about a P2P lending platform. It's more really about using the cash and feeding your family than going to online and getting a P2P lending platform. Having said that though, the biggest opportunity is through e-commerce. So Fintech in Southeast Asia is mostly enabled through e-commerce because more or less 80% of each country are actually shopping online. Most of them don't have a bank account. It means that you will enable access to finance, loans, payments, education, tuition, other things through e-commerce. So just today there was an announcement in Singapore that Credivo raised $1.2 million, which enables finance through e-commerce websites, but like Alibaba does in China. I think all these countries will see definitely a fintech push through e-commerce rather than do online platforms. Lastly, India, another country which hasn't been regulated yet, and they will follow probably the model of the UK, which would be exciting for the platforms. You have more than 30 companies who have raised a total $50 million US. And I think the biggest number in India is there are 1 billion people unbanked, underbanked, debanked, if you like. So this is a big opportunity people go after, and these guys are on it. So Faircent, Capital Float, and Gnirck are the well-known ones. You can see Capital Float raised in total $42 million already. So it's getting onto a growth path, given the huge market there that we see happening. Yeah, I think this is a very quick run through. I know we're running behind time. I'm also in German, so I'm more kind of pushing it through anyway. But I think in summary, what's next? We see in SME finance definitely a broadening of the spectrum. We can see all these platforms starting to do invoice financing. They're going to do secured loans, moving away from the P2P, moving into invoice financing, given that there actually is then less default rates, hopefully. And also, as I said earlier, SMEs have other problems right now. They rather care about the right accounting software. They're moving from paper to online. So how can you build a platform that actually serves you as an SME with various services, not just loans, but also advisory, accountancy, HR, payroll. The consumers are very protected in the markets. So where in the West it's rather free and open to do something with the consumer, the ASEAN regulators, they come after you. Anything you want to touch with the consumer, they don't like it. So B2B is the way forward. So find a way to work with banks, for example, find a way to work with other institutions to give out loans, which will then end up in partnerships between banks and more platforms. So I think the B2C model won't really work. It's more about B2B in this case. Oh yeah, if you wonder what I am, what I do, so I run an investment partnership in Singapore. We look into the platforms out there to invest. And we see a good trend of fintech startups in the region, but it's still early days. It's probably 3-4 years behind UK or US. But at the same time, it's also ahead. If you look at China, if you look at other markets, if you look at e-commerce, I think there's an interesting dynamic where you see a very mobile-first economy and society moving into the fintech direction, which is very different than we see in the West. Anyway, I think that's on my side. A very quick run through, and I hope you took some pictures and some tweeting. But yeah, any questions? I guess it was too quick, or too many logos, too many numbers. I invite you all to come to Singapore anyway. I think it's an exciting ecosystem right now. Very progressive regulator, very good community. And I know there's more and more activity between Korea and Singapore coming up. Yeah, question. Of course I knew you were going to ask a question. Yeah. Oh, damn it, yeah.
You give it quite a good description about the different nations, Indonesia,
yeah,
Cambodia, or Vietnam. But what is your personal experience at each places that can be very valuable to us?
Yeah, see, I didn't really want to give an opinion here in this presentation.
But even bias or prejudice still can be useful to us. So can you give your personal experience in each country?
Okay, so the question was, what's my personal experience in each country? I think the biggest challenge right now is you don't find enough good entrepreneurs and people to build platforms. Secondly, on the demand side, is not yet education of what you can do with P2P lending and marketplace lending. So I think there are other bigger challenges of consumers and business right now than necessarily getting access to P2P lending platforms. Secondly, on the SME side, the trust towards banks is very high. So the relationships with the banks are still there. Even though they seem to be underserved and unserved, there is already a trust between the banks and the SMEs. Having said that, it is changing now. You have a lot of young entrepreneurs, freelancers coming up who are starting to need more credit, who are starting to get more P2P lending platforms. I think there's a generation of old SMEs moving out and a new generation of kind of younger SME, the founder of the company is coming in to access new credits. And again, I think the e-commerce is very, very exciting, where it's the number one kind of industry in the region now, and that gives access to a lot of people, and it's a good channel to distribute more loans, which wouldn't be called P2P lending or SME lending. It's a very different way of e-commerce lending. Yeah.
I have a personal question.
Of course.
I myself am personally an incubator, venture incubator for past 25 years, incubating different technology-based operations. I'm currently very focused on fintech as well. Yeah. You as the Startup Bootcamp COO,
yeah.
What word of advice would you give those startup candidates in possibly finding the killer app or what's next, as in the business models? I mean, you don't want to reveal your secrecy, but if you can give us a general overview and the wisdom, can you share your ideas?
That goes away a bit to rather general fintech question. But don't do an app, right? First of all, don't build an app anymore. I think this is a longer conversation. I think personally, I see, I shared it on Monday in Hong Kong, there's a move away from the bottom-up fintech, and we move away from the B2C fintech. I think we see a move into the B2B fintech, and I'd like to say it's something like tech fin. The fintech we had seen the last 8 years was around educating the banks, educating the incumbents on what is happening. And this has been pushed by low interest rates, been pushed by crowdfunding, been pushed by venture capital money to really see the growth. I think we see in the next few years a turning away to actually proper technology. So I would rather focus on technology like AI, machine learning, big data that can be sold to financial service companies. So it doesn't have to be only a customer as a bank, can also be a hospitality company or a logistics company. Just build good technology. Fintech as an industry is more about education and change in mindset and the cultural change. But if you want to be a good company right now, a good entrepreneur, do technology first and then sell to banks.
I see.
And get a good mentor. I think get a good mentor, get a good board, get someone behind you that understands really the industry very well.
So you cannot expect to create a great fintech revolutionary startup without a great technology behind it.
I mean, I work with hundreds of fintech companies and multiple banks. I think at least 22 or something. There is not really yet any good IP being transferred or any revenue created between many banks and many startups. There's a clash of expectations where a bank cannot work with an early stage startup if it's a seed startup. It's very, very tough for a bank to because they expect an IBM or a TCS to come in and sell a solution, and a startup expects a bank to move fast and to have a short sales cycle. So I think there's an expectation clash which many haven't really seen yet, and I think there's a new way of dealing with this now.
Well, that's a very good insight. Any other questions from the floor? Oh, one more, please. Can we have the mic?
Thank you very much for your presentation. What do you think about the problem of escalation of this kind of platforms? Because I'm from Spain, and in our country there is a problem with the one side of the two sides, the side of the investors. Because when you are looking for SMEs, it's easy to find them because they want money. So it's easy to increase and to scale this place. But on the other side, you can finally spend like a lending club using the most of the investors that there are institutional investors, and
30%.
you are losing the real P2P.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this kind of escalations in Asia?
So in Southeast Asia, it's the opposite. You cannot find SMEs who won't get loans. You have a lot of cash around. They all want to invest in these platforms. But to actually educate the SME first to come to originate, to all the logos I've seen, I know all the founders very well, and they are literally on the street talking to the SMEs to say, hey, can you come to my platform, please? Do you need a loan? Because on the other side, there is a lot of rich money around that wants to invest in this, given the high interest rates they're getting from this. I think it's a bit of the opposite what I said, that what I haven't seen in US so far. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much
No worries.
for your wonderful insight.
Thank
Let's
you.
give him a big hand. It was Markus Gnirck, co-founder of Turv.